Hello everybody, my name is Ozzy and today I'm going to show you what you should be doing with your Tier 1 workbench once you have access to a Tier 2 and industrial crafters. This will allow you to craft as many satchel charges as you want, plus plenty of other useful items from the Tier 1. So first of all, we're going to need our trusty Tier 1 workbench, a couple of industrial crafters, power source of choice, electrical branch, a couple of boxes, some industrial components, the adapter, conveyor, splitter, and combiner, and then we're going to need a number of blueprints, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Now personally, I don't ever bother picking up my Tier 1 workbench, I just leave it there because I know I'm going to use it again later. And there are 2 slots for the industrial crafter, and we're going to use both of those. Normally, I'll just plug into my main power source, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use a battery. Next, I'm going to place a couple of boxes. If you decide to use small boxes like this for this build, I recommend putting them around backwards. It just makes the piping a little bit cleaner. We're going to add adapters to each box, and then we're going to put a conveyor on the left side on the bottom and one on the top, plus a splitter in the middle, and this will act as all of our inputs from this box here on the left, which we are then going to fill with a lot of delicious resources. You do want to connect those conveyors to the crafters, and then that completes our left side. On the right side, you want to put a splitter on the bottom and another one on the top, one for each crafter. And then you're going to put a combiner next to each of those splitters and a conveyor next to each of those combiners. You want each splitter to go into each combiner. And then each combiner to go into a conveyor. Now, what this will allow each of these conveyors to do is access both of these crafters. And the reason for that will make a little bit more sense in a moment. This conveyor is going to go over to our input box, and then the other conveyor is going to come to our output box. And then that's all of the industrial components. So next for the electrical, you can add a switch if you want to be able to turn the system on and off. You'll just connect the output of the switch to the input of a branch. And then your branch, you can connect in multiple different ways. I'm just going to go into the power in and then using the pass-throughs to connect all of these conveyors. And then also to the power in on the top crafter. And then the right side, I'm going to do the same thing with these conveyors. Power in, pass-through, power in, pass-through to the power in of the crafter. Now this branch needs to be set to 3 for its current configuration, and it'll use 6 total, 1 for each conveyor and then 1 for each crafter. Now the next thing we need to do is put blueprints into our crafter. And I know there's a whole lot going on in this box, but put simply, what we really want to prioritize for the Tier 1 workbench is, until at least we have access to C4 or rockets of some of that nature, we want to prioritize satchels. So we're going to grab the satchels, the stashes, and the bean can grenade, and then because satchels also require cloth, we might as well throw bandages in there as well. The bean can grenade is going to go in your bottom crafter, and it uses frags and gunpowder. And the top crafter, you're going to put in your satchel, stash, and bandages. The satchel will use bean can grenade, stashes, and rope, and then cloth will be used to make your small stash and your bandage. This will pretty much complete your top crafter. Because the satchel uses 3 items for inputs, there's not a whole lot left you can make on the Tier 1 with this extra little bit of input available. So using it for the stashes and the bandage lets us get the most mileage out of this that we possibly can. Now our bottom crafter has 2 additional input slots, plus metal frags and gunpowder are used in several Tier 1 items. So what this allows us to do is make a combination of which items we use the most and allow us to have a regular supply of each of those items. For example, if we wanted to use nail guns, spear guns, and pistols, Each of these use metal frags and gunpowder, so we could do all of these together with only these two inputs. You can also use this system to produce gunpowder, allowing us to bypass using a mixing table, although it does still use the extra charge for the charcoal. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to use a barricade blueprint and a handmade shell blueprint with the pistol ammunition. So if I wanted to set this up for gunpowder, I would put charcoal and sulfur as my other two inputs. This would still allow me to do spear guns and pistol bullets if I wanted to, or something similar. Or if all I cared about were these two outputs, I would preload one bean can grenade, one piece of charcoal, and then I would use two useless items just to fill this empty space. Now the purpose of this is because it won't move from one item to the next one until it can no longer fill this space with items or it's lacking the resources. So if I don't have these here, it's going to fill all three of these spaces with bean can grenades before it moves on to crafting gunpowder. For the purpose of this video, we're going to use pistols, handmade shells, and wooden barricades though. Now the next note is this is going to go in priority from the left, so if I want barricades primarily, and whenever I run out of wood, I want to make sure I have enough pistols, and then I want to prioritize satchels, and then only afterwards do I care about refilling the shotgun traps in my base. This is the order I would want to go in. Now your output doesn't have to match the input, but I like to just for consistency. Again, we want these here to kind of claim the space so that no additional outputs come here and the system runs efficiently. You don't have to pre-fill the input, we're going to do that with the filters, but just for visual's sake right now, this can be helpful. Up in our top, we're going to pre-fill the left side with stashes, mostly because this only takes 50 cloth, so it's a quick way to do it. We could do the same thing with bandages, but I kind of want to show you guys something about that. And again, it'll take priority from the left, so right now it's going to prioritize the stash. Because it's going to be full, it's not really going to worry about it. It will then check to see if it can make a satchel. If it can't make a satchel, it'll make a bandage. If it has the stuff to make a bandage, and then the stuff to make a satchel, and then it's waiting on stuff, it'll go back to bandage, and then once it has stuff for a satchel, it'll go back to satchel. It'll always prioritize the left first. We're going to pre-fill these, and then again an empty spot here at the end. I'm actually going to pull these out for a moment. Now the next thing we need to do is set up our filters. What we want for our left filters are all of the input items here on our crafter. So we're going to take metal frags, gunpowder, stone, and wood, if we spell it correctly. And we're going to put one minimum on each of these filters. What this minimum means is that whatever box I am pulling from, I want you to always leave me at least one. So if we use up all of our wood, there should be one left in here. What this does is it kind of bookmarks a spot and it saves it so that whenever we add additional resources, there'll always be a spot available for my wood. It's not going to completely fill up with frags. The next thing we're going to do is change our maximums to the maximum amount we need for any one of these crafts. For example, this will be 250 wood, 5 stones, 60 gunpowder, 20 metal frags, and because the pistol uses less of those than these, this is the number I want to go with. Now the reason for this is because I don't want items just sitting in here in full stacks of 1,000 taking up space if I'm not actually using them to craft. Also, it sets a limit so that if I'm out of wood, this spot doesn't fill with something else. It'll keep that placeholder to make sure the system continues running efficiently. Similarly, for the top side, we want to put all of our inputs into our filter. So we're going to need bean can grenades, stashes, rope, and cloth. Once again, we're going to put a minimum 1 on here to make sure that we have that buffer. Now, I don't have bean can grenades or stashes in here, so either preload these with one or wait until you've crafted one, make sure there's enough space, and put them in there. For our maximums, we want whatever is going to be necessary to create a craft. Bandages use 10 cloth, or sorry, bandages use 5 cloth and stashes use 10. That's why I'm using 10 cloth here. Our next filter is going to be the one that goes back to our input, and this is where we want to put in our bean can grenades and our stashes. So these will pull from our conveyors. And what we want to do is we want to leave a minimum of 1 bean can grenade and 4 stashes in those conveyors. The reason for this, for me at least, is I normally put my bean can grenades toward the end. You can up that number if you want to have these pre-filled, but I would rather leave as few bean can grenades in here as possible and have them craft into stashes. For the top here, I want to keep the stash as full as possible because I only use 1 stash in the crafting of a satchel. If I decrease the minimum amount on that filter, I'll end up with a couple extra stashes floating around in a buffer box somewhere. Now for the maximum, we're going to set this to 2. And the reason for that is so that we can keep 1 of each of those in here as a placeholder, and then the second one is the one that this next conveyor is going to pull into the crafter. Now in a previous video I did something similar to this, and I didn't have a conveyor here, and I just connected the conveyor directly to the crafter. The problem with that is when you send an item that is being crafted back into the crafter, if you connect it directly, it's just going to try putting that item back into the output stack, but if it goes through a box first, it'll properly go into the input. Now the last filter we need to set is the one that pulls all the rest of the items, and we do actually need to put every item on here. So we're going to have satchels, bandages, pistol and handmade ammo, and barricades. Now the reason we put these in here is so that we can keep that 1 minimum buffer that we want in all of our crafters to make sure that these outputs keep an item in there. And then we also want to set our maximums. What the maximums will do is tell the system how many of these we want, how many slots of these we want to fill with items, so that if, for example, I only want 1 stack of barricades, the system will stop at 1 stack and move on to the next item rather than fill this entire box with barricades. So for example, say I want 2 stacks of bandages, a couple stacks of bullets, 1 stack of shells, and 1 stack of barricades. And then the satchels I'm going to let craft until I no longer have enough resources. Essentially what will happen here is the system will fill this box with the number that I put in my output, and then once that number has been reached, it will also fill a stack in the crafter itself. For example, once I've reached my 1 stack of barricades in the box, it will try to fill a stack in here also. One of the ways I can prevent that with the barricades specifically is I can limit how much wood is available in this box at a time, but that gets into a lot more intricate stuff beyond the scope of this video. So now we're going to turn on our system. You do have to manually turn on each conveyor and the crafters for the first time. Once you hit this switch and then hit it back on, the conveyors should turn themselves on, and you'll just have to turn on the crafters, but most of the time I just leave the system running. This system will come to a full stop if the output box is completely full, as well as each output slot in the system, or it runs out of resources to craft any item. It will automatically restart itself, or rather continue once it receives items, or items have come out of that stack, out of the output box. So there's no real need to troubleshoot this once it is working efficiently. So as we can see here, we've gotten enough wood to craft a barricade, but we don't have any additional wood here because there is no more in our resource box. So once this finishes crafting this 1 barricade, it will move on to pistol ammunition. And then once it reaches 3 stacks of pistol ammo in here, plus a full stack of pistol ammo here, it will begin crafting our bean can grenades. Up top, so this is an issue. We can't have a minimum of 11. All right. So when your filters are accurate, Up top here, the system is already done gathering as many stacks as it needs, stashes as it needs. And you can see if it is able to create an item that it doesn't have room for, it'll just kick it out because it had a stack here and then we pulled that stack out. So it has as many stashes as it needs. We have enough cloth to create bandages, not enough bean can grenades to create satchels. So it's creating those bandages until the system can pull it into this box and until it's full. If this box is full of bandages, then it will start filling up in here. And you'll see these bandages are no longer being pulled out by the system. This will fill up to 3, and then the crafter itself will flash white, saying that it doesn't have enough items to continue. This white flash up here means that it is waiting for resources to be able to continue crafting. And essentially it's waiting for those bean can grenades, which are currently waiting for the pistol ammunition to finish. But this is a great way and a great system to craft up any number of things that you want to have available. You can also swap this out regularly if, say, you want to craft a couple of stacks of wooden ladders and then come back and craft some spears later. You can swap these out manually. But that is the automatic tier 1 workbench crafter. Hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, please hit that thumbs up button. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and I will see you all next time.